I got your picture. I'm coming with you. Dear Maria, count me in. It's this classic opening line most people think of when they hear the words all-time low. And this is fair enough. Dear Maria is a pop-punk mega classic, and fully deserving of all the attention it's had down the years. But this is just a small part of the story. All Time Low are so much more than just a band who set the airwaves on fire 17 years ago. They're pop-punk survivors. A band who weathered major label disappointment, critical maulings, and even some deeply unpleasant online accusations, and came out the other side. This is the story of how All Time Low stuck together through it all. All Time Low's story begins in Towson, Maryland in 2003, and they started out in the same way lots of bands did back then, just 4 high school friends playing Blink-182 covers. Those friends were Alex Gaskarth on vocals, Jack Barricat and TJ Eiley on guitars, Chris Cordilello on bass, and Ryan Dawson on drums. Eiley and Cordilello didn't stick around for long, but All Time Low quickly recruited Zach Merrick to take over on bass duties, while Gaskarth became a guitarist as well as the band's vocalist. This foursome would stand the test of time. After those early lineup changes, Alex, Jack, Zach, and Ryan would stay together to this day. Anyway, back in November 2003, they set about pooling their resources and self-recorded a demo EP, which caught the attention of Emerald Moon Records. Signing with Emerald Moon, the band released their second EP, The 3 Words to Remember in Dealing with the End, in 2004, followed by a full album, The Party Scene, in 2005. The Emerald Moon Records deal didn't last beyond that first LP, but that was the label's loss. Plenty of bigger labels were interested in the young guys from Maryland. They almost signed with Fueled by Ramen, but the label had just picked up Cute Is What We Aim For, so ATL missed out. Fortunately, Hopeless Records didn't have the same problem as Fueled by Ramen. The label signed the band while they were still in high school. After they graduated, they poured their heart and soul into the project, releasing the Put Up or Shut Up EP through Hopeless in July 2006. The band was already blowing up, but things were about to get crazy. Looking back, it feels like Dear Maria, Count Me In must have been a #1 single. It was everywhere in 2008, the pop-punk smash hit of the moment. But in fact, it only reached number 86 on the Billboard Pop 100. Still an amazing performance, but not quite All the Small Things or Boulevard of Broken Dreams territory. But before we look at Dear Maria, let's roll the clock back 1 year to 2007. After signing with Hopeless and releasing their EP, the band toured heavily. The EP had scored them loads of new fans, and this was helped by a bunch of successful Warped Tour dates. Throughout the early months of 2007, they worked on their second record, finally releasing So Wrong It's Right in April. It's a more evolved record than the previous one, with more complex melodies and what guitarist Jack Barricat described as beastly drum beats. And it includes super catchy, poppy numbers like Dear Maria and Poppin' Champagne. While these singles didn't light up the charts in the way we might remember, they did achieve serious airplay, particularly Dear Maria. Still a classic of the genre, the single eventually went triple platinum in the US, outselling singles that climbed higher in the charts thanks to its slow-burning sleeper appeal. Now the hot young band had a certified pop-punk classic under their belts, and the sky was the limit. A heavy touring schedule followed, but the band was loving life out on the road. The reaction of fans to the new material was insane, and it spurred the guys on to create their next record. Nothing Personal dropped in 2009, and is another slice of pop-punk wizardry. It also features some pretty solid singles. Damned If I Do Ya, Damned If I Don't is a fan favorite, and charted pretty well, although it hasn't achieved the lasting scene appeal of Dear Maria. And then there's Weightless, which features Mark Hoppus and Pete Wentz in the music video. All Time Low had famous friends, but now maybe they had more than this. Maybe they had famous peers, as it seemed they were on the cusp of joining their heroes among the pop-punk goats. Not bad for a bunch of high school kids who started out copying Hoppus's bass lines in their practice space. But would All Time Low manage to shift gears and move on to the next level? Or were they about to stall? In 2009, All Time Low got the news that was surely going to send them to the next level. Major label Interscope wanted to work with the band, and the deal was signed later that year. And it seemed to make sense. Gaskarth said they felt like they had hit a ceiling at Hopeless and needed the resources a major label could bring. However, it was not all plain sailing. There's a lot going on at Interscope, Gaskarth said. It takes a little bit longer to get things done and get things moving. It took another 2 years to release their debut on Interscope. Dirty Business was released in 2011 and featured a newfound emo tinge to their lyricism and songwriting. Not quite the all-out pop-punk of previous releases, there was an element of maturity to the album. On tracks like I Feel Like Dancin', co-written by Rivers Cuomo of Weezer fame, the band went satirical, showing how modern music labels use sex and product placement to sell their artists. On Guts, the band championed the idea of being true to yourself, something that All Time Low had always tried to do. The album sold well, soaring into the Billboard 200, but personnel changes at Interscope threw everything into disarray. All Time Low wanted to get started on their new album basically straight away, but the executives who had signed them had either been fired or quit. Suddenly, the band had no friends and supporters at the major label, but they'd already begun to put together the next album. They considered releasing it themselves, but eventually they decided to go back to Hopeless. Despite getting burned by their experience on a major label, Gaskarth was philosophical about the whole thing. "I don't fault the folks at Interscope for any of this," he said. "Unfortunately, we got lost in the mess of big business and higher-ups making deals. We asked to be released from our contract, and they understood why." Still, they were having a great time working with Hopeless once again, and while they didn't have friends at Interscope, the pop-punk world still loved them. Patrick Stump of Fall Out Boy was involved in the recording process on the next record, and their fifth album, Don't Panic, was ready for release by October 2012. Don't Panic didn't quite sell as well as those earlier records, although the single Somewhere in Neverland did make its way into the download charts. But the record gave All Time Low creative satisfaction, and fans loved it. The band took a break from writing and recording, and hit the road, hard. They toured with the likes of Pierce the Veil and A Day to Remember. While All Time Low were a bit more traditional in their pop-punk ethos, they fit right into that hardcore pop-punk scene, and that scene seemed to love them. 3 years after Don't Panic, the band were back in the studio, working with veteran pop-punk producer and Goldfinger frontman. These sessions delivered the album Future Hearts, a surprise hit for the band. While it didn't achieve much critical acclaim, it sold well. In the UK, it was briefly top of the album charts, while in the USA, the record sold 75,000 in its first week. The best ever first week for an ATL album. 7 years on from Dear Maria, All Time Low hadn't replicated the scene-galvanizing, zeitgeist-defining classic status of that single, but they had managed to become pop-punk royalty. This was the band you wanted on your festival lineup. This was the band you wanted to book if they toured in your town. Future Hearts was ATL's last album for Hopeless. In 2017, they'd laid those old ghosts, finally signing with Fueled by Ramen, just like they were supposed to all the way back in 2006. Last Young Renegade, the first record with Fueled by Ramen, was a little darker than their previous releases. Gaskarth has spoken about how their friends were getting married, having kids, and even passing away. While there's still plenty of energetic pop-punk on the record, it's a more somber affair. There's also a lot more synth and 80s pop influence. Did this signify a new chapter in the band's career? Were the pop-punk kings about to leave the genre behind? Or was something else altogether going to derail them? 2020 marked 12 years since Dear Maria, and most fans had already made peace with the fact that the band weren't going to write another scene game-changer like this. But they surprised everyone with the single Monsters. Working with Demi Lovato and Black Bear, All Time Low created one of the poppiest tracks to date, scoring the biggest hit of their career and gaining real acclaim in the process. The band, who had spent years as one of pop-punk's hardest-working acts, were finally getting the mainstream rewards they deserved. And they hadn't alienated their fans either. The band's fanbase were overjoyed with their new direction, and their skill at writing thoughtful, emotive pop. The album Wake Up Sunshine was a big hit too, gaining strong reviews and even winning new fans with its dreamy, sentimental outlook. But just when it looked like everything was going to be fine, the band was hit by an online firestorm. In 2021, a video was posted on TikTok accusing a pop-punk band of sexual activity with a minor, a fan only 13 years old. It was heavily implied that the band was All Time Low. A heated discussion followed on Twitter, in which some posters accused guitarist Jack Barricat of using his fame and position in the band to groom underage fans. The band immediately denied this, although some of the bands booked as support for the next tour pulled out. From February 2022 to November 2024, the band engaged in a bitter legal battle in which they tried to sue the owners of anonymous social media accounts, claiming defamation. Due to the anonymous nature of online activity, the legal process was difficult and drawn out, but eventually, the names of Jack Barricat and All Time Low were cleared. It was established that the band had been the victims of a smear campaign, and that someone had created a fake persona to make accusations of abuse that never happened. While it's important that accusations are taken seriously, and that those who have been abused get their voices heard, it's also vital that those who are falsely accused have the chance to clear their names. By falsely accusing members of All Time Low, the unnamed individual has made it harder for real victims of abuse to get the support and justice they deserve. In the end, the libel suit was dropped, but All Time Low emerged from this disturbing chapter with their names cleared and their reputation intact. While all this was going on, All Time Low actually released another album, their 9th in 2023. Tell Me I'm Alive is definitely a pop-punk record, but it features more of the synth and pop influences they'd been embracing in recent years. The band even said they'd been influenced by the likes of Queen and Elton John while writing the record. Reviews for the album were excellent. 20 years into their career, All Time Low had gone from just another pop-punk band, albeit a very, very hard-working one, to true artists, creating music that took the genre into new and exciting places. As of March 2025, Tell Me I'm Alive is the latest All Time Low album, but I think we can expect a follow-up in the coming years. So what's the verdict on All Time Low? Unless you're a hardcore fan of the band, hearing those 3 words probably takes you to one very specific direction: the direction of Dear Maria. And this is fine. Most bands never achieve anywhere near the kind of impact Dear Maria had in 2008. So having just one track that changed the scene like this one did is a huge achievement. But actually, when you dig into All Time Low's back catalog, there's so much more to find here. It might feel like All Time Low were one-hit wonders, but they actually charted plenty of times. And with Monsters, they showed they still had what it takes to make a hit record. But more than this, they showed their steadfast commitment to the genre they fell in love with as high school kids. They've made 9 albums, way more than most bands manage, and they've stayed true to themselves along the way. So if you haven't dived into the All Time Low back catalog in a while, now might be the time to do so. What do you think? Did the guys peak with Dear Maria? Or was this just the beginning of a long and impressive journey as pop-punk scene survivors? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and stay right where you are for another pop-punk deep dive in just a moment.